Hi everyone, Philip Good here. I am a relationship coach, been married to my beautiful wife for 48 years. Today's video is about something different, a little bit different, but I hope it'll be valuable to you to understand a bit about me and what I do and what you guys can get from it. Right, this video is entitled I Am a Palladian Starseed, and it's how to break free from abuse and find loving relationships. About 18 months ago, I decided to open my Akashic records. I found a lady who was a third generational psychic, and my daughter had experience with her. And I had my Akashic records open, which proved to be very interesting and it was very informative for me and clarified a few things. This lady said that I was a Palladian starseed. I'd had 402 lives on Earth and other planets and other star systems. That in fact I was what she termed a blueprint changer. Come here to planet Earth to change. And of course, starting off with myself. So I discovered my life purpose was to break the cycle of violence that had plagued my family for generations. And I remember when my mother had a miscarriage in 1951. I was the eldest of 6 children, right? My mother had a miscarriage in 1951, and I knew that was me because I knew the type of life I was coming into, and that it was going to be plagued with violence and so on. And I didn't think I'd be able to handle it. So I aborted that pregnancy, my mother's, and I thought, oh no, I can't handle this. Fast forward to 1953, and my mother got pregnant again, and it was me obviously coming through this time to be born. And right at the last minute, my mother always told me that she was 4 days in labor, right? And right at the last minute, I must have thought, no, I can't handle this life I'm about to live. I've got to get out of this. I've got to end this. I won't be able to handle it. I won't be able to survive. But I did come back. I did survive. I went black. I went apparently purple and blue and stuff, but they obviously gave me oxygen and brought me back. I survived. I don't know about thriving, but I survived, right? So my childhood was plagued with violence. At 12 months of age, I was knocked out of my high chair by my dad. I was in a high chair. He was feeding me. Obviously, I was 12 months of age, like I said, and I must have thought, oh, well, no, I finished my dinner, and I pushed my plastic plate off the tray, and went onto the floor. And in a fit of rage, my father went bang, knocked me right out of my high chair, and I went flying across the kitchen and dining room floor, ending up at my 18-year-old auntie's feet. And my auntie said, oh, you can't do that, he's only a baby, and so on. And so my father got furious with my auntie and said, pack your bags. She was staying with us over a weekend. It was sort of at a beach batch that my grandfather owned. And he said, get your bag. I'm going to take you home. And, obviously in a fit of rage, he would have been furious. So that was that. That was my experience. And I always think when I was laying on the floor, if I was looking back at my father, supposedly my protector, right? The person that loved me, going to protect me, what would I have been thinking? What would you have been thinking? So that was my first induction to the family that I came into. And 12 months of age, my mother was pregnant then with my brother. My mother had 4 boys under five, and then 2 girls later on. So the next major event that happened was when I was 8 years old, and I witnessed my mother knocked out with one punch by my dad. They usually argued about the same things over and over again. It was either about money or lack of money. My mother was a stay-at-home mum. My father went to work, brought home the bacon type thing, but he controlled all the finances. So I remember in the days of pound, shillings, and pence, she got paid £5 a week for keep housekeeping money, and even in spite of prices going up, and mum's trying to not only feed us but also clothe us, schools and things like that, shoes, uniforms, and the rest of it. But no, my father, he had plenty of money, and the house that they were living in was the section was given to him by my grandfather, my dad's father. He actually built a house, a big two-storied house for my father and mother, and so he had no debt. My father had no debt. He had no hire purchase. My grandfather was quite a wealthy man, so he bought a brand new car off the floor. So he had no debt. So he was driving trucks. That's what his profession was, and so he had plenty of money. But he would only give my mother a small amount of money, not even enough to balance the budget. And because he wanted the rest for going down to the pub and shouting his mates grog and stuff, or otherwise going to the RSA, the Returned Service Men's Association, and doing the same thing, and keep my mother short. And the only way that my mother did balance the budget was my grandfather, my dad's father, lived with us until he passed when I was 11, and he would give my mother a bit of money on the side from director's fees from a company that he owned. And he'd always say to my mother, don't tell Jack, just keep it hush, just between you and I. And my other grandfather, my mum's dad, even though he only earned a small amount of money, he would still give my mother something, enough to be able to get by on. And he'd also provide fresh vegetables. And my nana, my mum's mum, would come with tins full of cakes and that for us hungry boys, to help my mother out. So while I had a bad role model as a dad, I had two great role models as grandfathers, and my grandmother as well, of course. So that was a fight about money and lack of it. And I can remember my father was sitting with his back to my mother, sitting in the dining room table with his back to my mother, and she was peeling potatoes. So in the heat of the argument, she picked up some potatoes and threw them at my father, hit him on the back, and he just got up, slowly but surely walked over to my mum and went bang, and gave her an uppercut under her jaw, and lifted her off the ground a couple of inches and knocked her clean out. And I was 8, and my other 3 brothers were 8, 7, 6, and 4.5. And my mother lay still, didn't move. We thought, oh no, she's dead, but she wasn't. She was just knocked out. And my grandfather, who was in the house at the time, came out of his bedroom and he knelt down beside my mum, and he looked up at my dad, who had been drinking alcohol, and that was one of his problems as well, drinking alcohol, which made his behaviour way worse than it normally was. And he looked up at my father and said to him, "Never let drink rule your life, Jack. Never let drink rule your life." Well, I've never forgotten those words. But anyway, that was that episode. Fast forward to being 11 years old. It was the year that my grandfather died. I was very, very close to my grandpa. He was a lovely man, total opposite to my dad. He was a loving man, generous man, totally unselfish, just a lovely, lovely person. I couldn't understand why my father and my grandfather, his father, were like chalk and cheese. So different. Anyway, at 11, after my grandfather died, my mother and father had a huge argument, and my mother went upstairs and loaded one of my father's guns, and had a loaded gun, and was pointing at my father in the bedroom. And I walked in, like I always did, and I got in between my mum and dad, and they had fights, and usually copped the blows myself, so my mother didn't have to. And she had a loaded gun, but at the time, so I went and stood in between them, and my mother was having one of her 3 sort of emotional breakdowns. she had saliva running down her cheeks, and she was just totally out of it. But at the time, I was of a mind that I didn't care whether I was shot or not. I didn't care whether I lived or died. That was my mindset at the time. And so I did take the gun off my mum and give her a hug. And so that was when I was 11. And that was the thing. The other major thing was, I guess, it was, I knew my mum loved me, of course. But she was so busy, looking after with 4 kids under 5. So it was very hard to have a conversation with her because she was so busy. And she would be doing something and then listening to you with one ear and, focusing on what she's doing with the other type thing. And so that was what that was like. And but my dad, I never ever felt love. I never felt, because love is a feeling, right? I never felt love for my dad over all the 51 years that he was alive in my life. He died when I was 51. So over those 51 years, I never experienced real love for my dad, which was a huge regret. But I'd always tried over the years to try and find my father's love, if you like. I was a sprint champion, 100-meter sprinter. I was a rugby league player, a rugby league representative player. I mean, but I was tough. I was a hard nut. My father taught me how to use my shoulders and hit really hard. I mean, when I got up to teenage stage and playing rugby league, I mean, I'd hit guys half again as big as me and hit them so hard they'd be literally stretched off, because I had no fear, and also had no feeling, no fear of getting hurt. And got to the stage, because of the lack of love type thing with my dad and I got to the stage I had no real feelings at all. I was more like, can describe myself as more like a machine, like an it, than a human being. And so that was that. And that was that. And of course, 11 years of age, like I'm still trying to prove, trying to get my dad to love me. And I remember when I was 11 years old, in the last year of primary school, this is in Auckland, New Zealand, and I remember coming home with the end of year report. It had 11 ones in it, right? 11 ones, the top mark in every subject. And still, that was not enough to get any real accolades or to be told I love you, or great effort, and so on. So so that was that. I remember at one point too, like I had an argument. Usually I stepped into arguments with my mum and dad, and I put my 2 cents worth in to get the argument away from my mum so she didn't get hurt or hit, and I would take the hits so she didn't have to. I remember once in my bedroom, my father came in, and I, considered I did something wrong. So I remember he punched me and knocked me down 7 times onto my bed. And each time I got back up again, I would never cry. And I would look at him. And this was just one instance. There were many, many times this happened. And I would get up and say to my father, look him straight in the eye, and say, "You have your go now, mate, because when I'm big, when I'm an adult, I'm going to do you." And with that, bang, get knocked down again. But I'd always get back up again. Always get back up. My mind was, the only time I won't get back up is if you knock me clean out. Right? That was my mindset. So I felt no pain. I had no fear. It was like the adrenaline in my body took away any feelings of pain. And like I said, I never feared being hurt, being knocked out, or I never feared the worst case scenario if I was killed. I had no fear at all. So with all this in mind, fast forward to 17 years of age. my brothers and I, we purchased a little car to go to high school in and so on. And I remember this particular afternoon, coming back home and coming in the door. And as typical thing, my father quite often be on shifts. He was a shift worker, be on 73 shifts. So in the afternoon, he'd be home by 3:15, and we get home from high school at about 20 to 4, quarter to 4. Anyway, I could hear a big argument going on in the kitchen, and so I went in and dropped my school bag down and went in, and of course that big argument happening, and of course I put my 5 cents worth in, and there's a lot of swearing, cursing going on, and so on, and but eventually things sort of subsided, calmed down. I thought, oh well, this is good, it's over. So I went and sat down in a lounge chair and had a newspaper up. I read the newspaper. And my dad came up and over the newspaper and hit me with 4 hard punches. Bang, 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 bang. 2 sides either side of the face. As hard as he could punch. And then he stood back. But to his amazement, it had no effect on me. And I remember slowly folding the newspaper, rolling it up. And I said to him, in a steely, calm voice, why did you do that? And the time he was rolling up his sleeves, taking his top teeth out, his false teeth out, taking off his watch and getting ready for a big fight. So anyway, I slowly stood up. But it was a weird sort of feeling. It was almost like I felt like a tiger or a lion ready to pounce at its prey, So I was so calm, so steely calm. Never took my eyes off my father. And I slowly got up out of the chair. And of course, he took a swing at me and missed. And I picked him up. This all happened in a split second, right? Picked him up, drove him into the brick wall above our fireplace. He rebounded off that onto the floor, and within a split second, I was on top of him. I knocked all the wind out of his sails. Remember, he taught me how to be a rugby league player. I was a hard ass when it came to rugby league. A player, a tackler. It was a devastating tackler. I put my shoulder, lifted him up like he was nothing, drove my shoulder into him, and when he rebounded off that, all the wind was knocked out of him. So I was on top of him with my fist up like this, ready to finish him off. I looked down into my father's eyes, and all I could see was fear, and the words that said to me, wow, I'm about to be killed by my own son. That's what the words said to me. Now, at that time, an emotionally charged moment, it was amazing at the time. My mother was sort of back out of the lounge room in the doorway between the kitchen and the dining room. And my 2 kid sisters were only about 7 or 6 and 3 at the time. And they're all screaming. And believe it or not, after all the abuse, the physical abuse that my mother had sustained over the years, and me going to her aid, so I'd get hit and so she didn't have to, my mother yelled out, leave him alone. After all that happened, she wanted me to get off him and leave him alone, right? But it was amazing while all this was happening, the thing that there was a message, the words that came into my mind. And those words said, if you do what you're about to do, you'll be as bad as he is. All I can think of, I didn't recognize that voice, but all I can think of is either God or Jesus. Those words came into my mind at that emotionally charged moment. And I knew, and I've always known, if I'd have started on my father, I would have killed him with my bare fists. That's how much white rage I had in me. It would have been hard, it would have been easy. And I played that scenario back time and time again. But what the effect was, it had me get up. I looked down at him. His eyes was full of fear. I got up and I walked away. And at that pivotal moment, I'd broken the cycle of violence that had plagued our family for generations. I had learnt self-control in an emotionally charged moment. And guess what? That served me my whole life. My whole life. And I achieved that first mission. My first mission was, in this lifetime, was to break the cycle of violence in my family. So that's what happened. And so that was a huge moment in my life. So what's the solution? So if you experience abuse in childhood, how do you get past that and learn to love yourself and create or develop or be one half of a two-person or loving relationship? How do you create a loving relationship after a childhood like that? Well, yeah, I know it's difficult because when you have the attitude then is, and you say to yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I don't belong. I wasn't good enough to be loved, right? But guess what? That's not true. It's not your problem. If you were a kid and involved in a situation like that, it was not your problem. It was your parents' problems. They were the ones who were out of control. It was not your fault. So the first thing to do, and first of all, as we know, you've got to learn to love yourself. Doesn't matter about anybody else. Because in this life, you're only here everything is about you. Nobody else. You can change yourself if you want to. So the first thing to do is it's all about forgiveness, guys. I can't don't underestimate the importance of forgiveness. Forgive yourself first and foremost. Forgive your parents. And forgive anybody and everybody else that ever done anything to you in your life. Forgiveness is what sets you free. Forgiveness is what helps you break free from the abuse of childhood in the past. Because first and foremost, most important aspect of forgiveness, it's about self-love. It's about self-love. It's about loving yourself and not blaming yourself. You were only a kid. It wasn't your fault. You weren't to blame. And what you must realize is that when you were born, when you came into being in this lifetime, you were given some important things, some great things at point of creation. You're given a mind, you're given consciousness, and you're given thought. You think your way through this life. And the important things you're given at birth, nobody can give them to you, nobody can take them away. It's the Creator, God, Source, whatever you like to call them, Great Spirit. The gift that you're given to you is what we call innate well-being. You're given hope, unconditional love, wisdom, peace of mind, resilience, motivation, gratitude, kindness, and a willingness to want to develop yourself, personal development. You're given happiness, joy, inspiration, being in the zone. All these things were given to you at birth. Nobody can give them to you. Nobody can take them away. What happens, though, over the course of your life, things get, all the crappy things that happen, right, in your life, they sort of cover up that innate well-being. If you can imagine an onion, layer by layer, the onion gets larger and larger and larger. And that's all the negative stuff, the dark stuff that's happened in your life. And you get stuck there. And you can't get back to that state of innate well-being you were given at birth. Unconditional love. Why is that so important? It's so important to unconditionally love yourself. Unconditionally love a boyfriend or a prospective mate in a relationship. learn to unconditionally love them. That means love the infinite being that person is and has always been. They don't have to do anything or have anything. Just be the magnificent, infinite being they are. And that's what's happened in Ollie and I, in our relationship, right from the word go. It's great to be friends, yes. Learn to be friends, to like each other and love each other. What you got to do is it's not just a physical attraction or relationship, guys. It's looking into the heart of the person to where love resides. And that's what I did with my wife. And I found that she had so much love there to give me, to give our children, to give everyone. And you know, the thing that I couldn't understand, because my wife, Eileen, she grew up in an abusive family as well, with violence. At 16, she was beaten black and blue over her back. She couldn't walk. She crawled out of a bedroom window to a neighbor's place for help. That's at 16. The time that Eileen and I met at 22, she'd already forgiven her parents. And I couldn't understand how could she do that with all the things that her parents had done to her, particularly her father. And I didn't take a leaf out of her book. I didn't literally forgive both my parents until I was 65. And the only reason I forgave my parents was I wish I'd taken a leaf out of my wife's book and followed Eileen and forgiven my parents way early. It would have released a lot of hate, tension, and anger that I bottled up for years. Because when I actually saw a Louise Hay's video, it's about the abused and the abuser. And in that video, Louise Hay said, what you've got to do is you've got to walk a mile in the shoes of the abuser when that person was a little boy or a little girl, and imagine what their life was like. My father, for instance, I know for a fact that my grandmother, my dad's mum, died when she was 50. I didn't know her. She died before I was born. And allegedly, I didn't know her, so I can't. But how the story went, though, is my grandmother had a short fuse, and she used to get angry and violent towards my dad, and he used to go running to his father, my grandfather, for protection. And so that's what his life was like, right? So he grew up with a lot of violence himself. And maybe my grandmother, who was violent, maybe she grew up with some sort of violence herself. So it would have gone back and back and back in the generations, stepping down each generation and continue on. And my mission, as I learned, was to stop that cycle of violence in my family once and for all by saying enough's enough, right? And I did that. And it carried on into my relationship with Eileen. We've had a loving relationship over 48 years. Not perfect, because perfection doesn't exist. But it was like continuous improvement over our 48 years of marriage. We still have a beautiful relationship. I love her more unconditionally now than I did when I first married her 48 years ago. And created a great environment for our 4 children. They grew up with love. They didn't know what violence was or abuse was. They grew up in a loving environment. And now, Wiley and I have 11 grandchildren who grew up and they're all grown up similarly, never experienced violence in their lives. 11 beautiful grandchildren, so well adjusted. So it's hard to say hard to express how proud Ollie and I are of all this. It started with peg in the sand, enough's enough with us, and the sort of things that we've created, the legacy. The relationship we created for each other, the environment created for our children, and how our grandchildren, and everything has followed on from that, from our decision to stop that cycle of violence and create something totally different. So what I'm saying, guys, is you have the pen and paper. As an adult, you are in control. Write a new story. Write a new story filled with love, happiness, togetherness, close connection. Love yourself. And say to yourself constantly when you look in the mirror, I am good enough. I am lovable. I do belong. I am a loving human being. I deserve to be loved because that's exactly right. You do deserve to be loved. Even if you didn't feel that love as a child, feel it as an adult. Don't try not to. Always look at the best. Look at the best in any potential mate. Don't push anybody away that could obviously end up a great partner for yourself. It's really important if you're growing up with abuse and if you haven't felt the love, to connect with a relationship coach who's been through what you're going through or been through. Maybe you haven't quite got over it yet. But get in touch with a relationship coach who knows exactly, who does get you. Why? Because I've been there and I've come out the other side. I've gone from hate to love love to unconditional love, and there's nothing better. Like I say, you got the pen and paper. Create a new story based on love, on unconditional love and happiness. Have a vision of what your dream relationship's like, your dream life, and go out and create it. You are unstoppable. I love you. And if you need help, I'm here for you. I know I can help you, just the way I help myself. And Ollie and I have helped each other. Love you guys. Hope you get something out of it. Sorry this video is a bit long, but it's very, very important. And I guess it's the reason all what I've said in this video is why I decided to become a relationship coach after being a dairy farmer for more than 40 years. It's about contribution, guys. It's about giving back to you all that I have gained, all my wife and I have gained over our lifetime together, over our 48 years. And now I can help you achieve the same if that's what you want. Okay, guys. Love you all. Bye for now. Thank you. Bye.